summer learning ones, to where after that 6 weeks, you've forgotten what you learned the year before. So we've tried to slow that down. That's the reason.
Are we ready? Call this meeting to order. Good morning. We'll begin by asking Ron Campbell, Supervisor Ron Campbell, to lead us in the pledge.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you,
Supervisor. Okay, we'll go into our next item of business, call to the public. Is there anyone out there that'd like to address? Hearing none, go to our next item of business. Public Health Service District. The Board of Supervisors will convene as the Board of Directors of the Greene County Public Health Service District and will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors following the consideration of this following item, the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
I second that motion by Mr. Campbell.
The motion has been made and second. Call for vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, so ordered. We will now convene as the Board of Supervisors and move into our next item of business. The Flood Control District. The Board of Supervisors will convene as the Board of Directors of the Greene County Flood Control District and will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors following consideration of this item of the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
I second that motion by Mr. Campbell.
Motion has been made and second. Call for vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, so ordered. We now will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors and we will move into our next item of business. Tony Hines, Public Works Facility Manager. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Tony Hines, Fleet Manager. We're looking for permission to go out for bid for the 2 new Tahoes that we got for this fiscal year. We got them in last week, so we're ready to go out for the upfitting.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns?
How many, oh, sorry, I just question, so we've already done 2.
We did 2 from the previous fiscal year.
Right.
They just got finished and now we're on these 2 from this fiscal year.
And these are the only 2 we have.
The only 2, yeah.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Well, I move that we approve to solicit bids for upfitting the 2 2025 Sheriff's Office Tahoes.
I second that motion by Mr. Ron Campbell.
Motion has been made and second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I call for vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Ayes have it, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I think maybe we might go back to, I don't know if we can
Call
go
the
back to
public?
call to the public, because I see Mr. Attaway here to introduce somebody.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Okay,
Thank you.
we'll go back to call to the public. That way, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I apologize for the interruption. As the board has requested in the past, I brought some new employees up to meet the board, and if you would permit me, I'd like to introduce them.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
This is Cadet Raymond Perez. Nice to meet you guys. Cadet
Nice
Ruben Rodriguez.
Pleasure to meet you.
And Cadet Jason. They're going to, this is their second day on the job. They're in pre-academy right now. We will be, as we have in the past, we'll be conducting our own detention academy for the next several weeks to get these guys trained up and work in the jail.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good luck to you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Geez, I thought you guys were students in school.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you. All right, well, then we'll proceed into our next item of business. Derek Rapier, County Administrator, and Bianca Castilla, Clerk of the Board. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. As has become somewhat of our pattern here in this particular fiscal year in particular, we review our revenue picture each month. And for Mr. Wern's benefit, our primary month-to-month revenue drivers are shared sales tax revenue. We have two streams of sales tax. One comes from the state. It's sales tax collected all over the state of Arizona. It is distributed on a formula that is based on a couple of things that matter to Greeley County. One is ours is population based. Others, it's a share of the overall state revenue, but ours is, not population. Ours is the overall revenue contributions. A huge part of that number you see is from what we call severance tax, and that is a somewhat of a manufactured sales tax that comes when ore is removed from the ground, but it's severed from the ground. It is taxed as though it were sold. And so that's a huge part of the formula that goes into our revenue stream each month. The number you see in blue, the 569, 519, you'll see is above the trend. That represents money that was collected in November, reported in December, and distributed in January. And then we get how much that distribution was in February. So we're looking back into November, December for these numbers. The numbers out here on the right, where's my cursor? This is what the current distribution is relative to the last year, 3 years average. We did not predict this, but during the pandemic, we actually did very well on our shared sales tax revenue. And as it has come back to the mean, come back to the average, we've seen more normal numbers. But you'll see this column is other than this number, and that was because this red number to the left, 813, 323, was a result of a correction in how electricity was taxed in manufacturing. And the mine, once the ore leaves the ground, becomes essentially a manufacturing center. So there was a huge sales tax hit there. FMI made us whole on that, but in terms of sales tax revenue, we took a hit that month. So that April figure is always a little bit suspect. However, this last column is how we did over last year, month-to-month comparison. And you'll see that we are, in the last 3 months, we're ahead. We have some ground to make up over the previous year. But it was that trend at the end of fiscal year 23 and, well, end of 23 and into 24 that we set our monthly revenue projection at $425,000 a month. So this is of course quarterly averages. As we scroll down here to this number here, particularly the projected gross annual revenue, we projected $5,100,000 as how much we would receive from our shared sales tax revenue. You can see that we're ahead of that projection by about $620,000. This number in green above represents our overage or combined over and underage for shared sales tax and the 1/2-cent sales tax. We keep track of similarly the 1/2-cent sales tax. This is a local excise tax that we collect on sales of transactions that take place only in Greenlee County. It's 1/2 cent on every transaction. And so there again, you'll see that this month's number is above the trend for the year. But you see the same sort of mixed numbers. The 3-year average, we're down. So anytime, for example, if FMI buys a truck bed, and if the point of sale is here, we get a tax off that. Now we've tried to convince Caterpillar they need to open up a satellite office here and sell all of their stuff here, but they keep selling it out of Mesa or Casa Grande. And so, but there are other things. A lot of the stuff that you see coming in to the mine is taxed locally. That's the point of sale. And so that represents mostly that. There's a lot of retail built into that as well, but that's where that number comes from. You'll see that over the last 7 months, we've had 3 positive months and 4 negative months over last year's average. We're all in the red over here on the 3-year average. But as you come down here to this, we projected 1.45, I think it was, or 1.44 million, and we're $18,000 above projections at the moment. So from a revenue, from a budget standpoint, we're in good shape. As you'll recall, 2 weeks ago, we reviewed our expenditures through January, And our expenditures are by and large right where they should be. Most of those offices, they're within, $50,000 each year of their projected budgets. They do very well. The more volatile ones, where there's more like Public Works, Roads, Sheriff's Office, they're larger budgets. They have more contingencies or eventualities. And in most cases, they're under those budgets. Budget wise, we're in good shape. But this is the time of year where we also start looking forward to fiscal year 26 and begin deciding on what we want to do for a revenue projection there. If the trend of this month continues, if this is not an outlier, then we might bump that 425 up to 475, maybe even 500,000. But we're going to want to watch that carefully over the next 2 to 3 months. We know that there are cost-cutting measures going on at the mine. Part of that severance tax formula is the difference between the price of copper and the cost of production. And that's something that we have no control over. In fact, we're not even allowed by law to look in the formula and find out how they're doing it. Because if we did, we would know trade secrets that would then become public record. But how costs are allocated, that's beyond our control. But we obviously hope this is a trend that we can build on. But right now we're sitting good. We're about $600,000 above projected revenue 7 months into our fiscal year. And be glad to answer any questions.
Can you just scroll up just a little bit? I wanted to see the month prior.
Oh, you bet.
Oh, yeah, so
Yeah, we're a solid, almost $100,000 over this month from last.
and we'll see what, this month does to see if that's a trend or if that's a leap.
A blip.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Renee and I get these things and we sort of like, yeah, great number. And then, we don't know whether that's an upward trend or
Yeah. I want to look for a trend.
exactly, or whether or not they're making up for something that was a little bit lower last month. We don't
Yeah.
know. But we're hoping it's a trend.
Trends are gonna be harder to predict in our environment, I'm sure.
It is. And I'll move into this into the legislative thing, but there are a lot of things right now going on literally by the day that are going to cause some volatility that we simply don't know how they're going to play out. Every day, just about at least 2 or 3 times a week, we're getting executive orders that affect economies. They affect the normal operations we're used to. Those kinds of ripples in an economy play out. And people become, for example, you may not want to go out and buy a car if you don't know you're going to be employed the next day. Right now, the stories are awash with people who've relocated for federal jobs, show up, and within a week, they find out they've been laid off. That has a psychological effect on an economy that ripples through. I think it'll eventually find some stability, but right now, it's hard to see how the current climate is going to play out over the next 4, 6, 12 months. If there's one topic, I spent a couple of hours yesterday reviewing news, fiscal or financial news, trying to get a handle on where this may be headed in terms of financial and economic trends. Very difficult to tell right now. There have been widespread rumors of coming inflation due to the tariff battles that we've sparked. Those have been put off till March, so we'll see how that goes. But I can tell you that right now, a lot of the chatter I'm hearing around counties is buy it now, especially if it involves steel or aluminum. Get it immediately while the stock is on hand. And those things too have a way of rippling through an economy. So we'll see how it goes. It may be a rather jumpy 4 months leading into our budget adoption. So
We're only a month and 3 weeks into it, and it's a mess.
well, and it's interesting. I say this with only part of my tongue in my cheek. One person's mess is another person's celebration. There are people who are just giddy about what's happening, and everything is good. And there are people who are absolutely sick to their stomach about what's happening, and everything's bad. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. We just don't know where in the middle it lies at this point. But it's certainly an interesting time to be watching budget numbers. So. Which is for us, that's where the rubber always meets the road. Mr. Chairman, if I may move to our legislative discussions.
ahead.
There were about 1,800 bills filed in the legislature this year. this is the last week for those bills to be heard in their house of origin. 1,100 of those bills have never been assigned to a committee. That's the processional to the graveyard. They're dead or
That's where
almost
they
dead.
die, right?
Probably a good half of those or more, maybe bills filed by Democratic lawmakers that didn't go out and try and find bipartisan support. And so they're killed almost on principle that it's a Democratic bill, we're gonna kill it. Some of those may just be memorials, odd ideas, constituent bills, things that bring up, and they have to file them to satisfy their constituent, but nobody's expecting them to move. But we whittled it down to about 700, give or take. Some of those ideas that didn't get a hearing will pop back up later in the process. Some of the bills that are there right now will change. There's a bill regarding the correction officer retirement plan that is probably going to change again today. There's another stakeholder meeting. It doesn't affect us because we don't have retirement employees. The one I wanted to highlight for you that there are two bills right now working their way through, one through the House, one through the Senate. The one in the Senate is focused, these are election bills. The one in the Senate is focused primarily on how do we shorten the time it takes to count the election. And in very simplistic form, it's been modified a bit, but in very simplistic form, it would involve stopping late early ballots at Friday before the election. So late earlies are ballots we mail out and people bring them in. After Friday, they become what we call late earlies. Everything received before the Friday before an election, we count with an early board. So we've got those ballots counted. No one knows the number, not even our elections director, but those are counted before the election. Then all the ballots come from Friday, dropped off in a box over the weekend or brought in on election day are called late earlies. The basic structure of this bill would be to shut that off mostly by Friday. That means we're not counting those extra ballots, verifying signatures, all that kind of stuff 10 days after the election. The other bill that's making its way through, I think, is far more concerning. And that is that and there's two versions of this. One is a bill that'll go to the governor. We think she'll probably veto both of them if they both make it through. But they've got companion resolutions, House continuing resolution, Senate continuing resolution. That would send it to the ballot. So the one coming out of the House would restructure elections. We've been using this for 15 years. Vote centers. You can show up anywhere in the county and vote except Eagle or Blue. And you can vote in Clifton, Morenci, Duncan. You're on your way to work, vote Morenci. You're on your way to a game in Duncan, vote in Duncan, whatever it may be. This bill that's proposed by Representative Cullivan would do away with vote centers, and you'd have to have a precinct for every 1,000 voters. So for us, that would mean probably going from, Eagle and Blue plus 3 vote centers to probably 6 to 8 new precincts. So we could have anywhere from 8 to 10 or maybe even a dozen precincts, depending how they fall out. That means, what's our minimum number, 5 at each polling place? Right. So we've now quadrupled the number of vote poll workers we need. We would end up buying some more machines. Part of this bill would require that we have on-site vote counting, which means we may have to purchase more vote counting machines. We have invested heavily over the years, and we're going to likely come to you again and ask for a big investment in a central count voting machine. But if this thing goes through, come 2026, we would be voting as a state on whether to go to precinct voting. That sounds appealing to a lot of voters. But what ends up happening is, especially when you use vote centers, people live in Duncan, they head up to Morenci, I'll just vote on my way. They can't. You've got to vote in your precinct. You can't vote just anywhere. And so either you fill out a provisional ballot that will never be counted, or they tell you to go back and you say, I don't have to do it. I don't get off work until 6. I won't be able to make it, whatever it is. I think we will find tremendous amounts of frustration. Our costs for elections will go up, and it will take us several cycles to get used to going back to the way we did it 15, 20 years ago. Like I say, it has a lot of appeal to certain segments of our voting population, both in the county and statewide, but it is a 20-year step backward. And so we're watching that closely. Each of you filed a letter with our representatives, and I was told by those who watched the vote our representatives held out till the very end. They ended up going with the party sway, but they held out. And so we may need to do a similar campaign with our Senator Gowan, and help them understand why this is not a good idea. But those are the two I want to make you aware of. There's lots of other things going on. Most don't have a direct impact on Greenlee County. There will likely be some maneuvers to shift some costs our direction to all counties, but in most cases, they will impact us not as much as others. So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Now, the one that did away with early voting, didn't that one already get vetoed by Hobbs? Governor Hobbs?
Not yet. No, it is, so it doesn't do away with early voting. That was vetoed last year. The
Okay,
current one would only shorten the time period to turn in on early voting.
there was one she did yesterday, that's why
Yeah, the one that we've been watching has not made it all the way through
okay.
the process yet. It's still in Senate. It was also put together by Senate President Peterson, and it's likely to be the one that they all rally around. And frankly, it's something that we can adapt to fairly easy. And it makes a lot of sense, particularly for people who want results early. And so I think we can adapt to that a whole lot better than we could to 10 precincts in the county. We may lose our election inspector if we do that. I don't know. So, but yeah, she has vetoed early, doing away with early voting, and
Right.
she will always do away with that. And I'm not sure when you got almost 90% of the state voting early by ballot, by mail-in. I don't think that's going to pass at the ballot. I think the Senate and House know that. You can't give that convenience away and then take it back. So, and you've heard a lot less election integrity issues this year because the quote unquote right people won. It's hard to complain about an election you won. So anyway.
Okay,
Sounds good.
right. You're done.
You're done.
Bianca, calendar and events.
Today is, this afternoon is Small Counties and Eco, and then the Health Trust Conference starts today and it goes until Friday. CSA Board of Directors is tomorrow. LPC and, SEGO meeting is tomorrow, and that's in
Friday.
Cochise County, or Friday, the 21st.
Okay.
And that's it. Next, the 28th Friday is another LPC, and that's all I have for Friday for this month of February. Going to March 1st, Saturday through the 5th is the NAGO conference in DC. LPC on the 7th. Our first board meeting in March is on the 11th. Morenci starts their spring break March 10th, and it goes through the 21st. County managers and LPC is on the 14th. Duncan starts their spring break on the 17th, March 17th through the 21st. Small counties and Eco on the 19th. CSA on the 20th, and LPC meetings on Friday for the month of March. And then the second board meeting is on March 25th. That's all I have for March. And add anything else? April. Our first board meeting in April will be the 8th. County managers on the 11th, and then LPC every Friday. Small counties on the 16th, Eco on the 16th, April 17th, CSA, and our second board meeting will be April 22nd. And that's all I have.
In April, for small counties, is that when we are?
We
March.
were, but we just switched with Santa Cruz March.
Oh,
They
March.
approached us
Okay,
last week. They've got a conflict with an event going on in their county. They asked if we could cover it. And so we switched to March. It'll be the 20th, I believe.
19th.
19.
Yes.
And then I just have one thing on, in February, tomorrow, February 20th, we have Gila Idol here in Morenci. If anybody wants to attend, it's at the Morenci Club. It starts at 6:30. It'll be a nice event, so.
And on that Wednesday, the 19th, what time does that meeting? What are the times for that meeting?
5:30, they
5:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Eastern Counties Organization generally meets from 3:30 to 4:30, and then the Small County Forum meets at 5:30 to about 7. One thing we might want to consider, there was a time years ago, that Small County Forum was the most cohesive group among CSA. They would talk about different positions in legislation and often vote as a block because a lot of the issues hit the same. The world has changed a bit, but they're also, Greene County sort of taking the lead in trying to bring some substance back to that meeting. And so if you would like to have CSA help us arrange for someone to come and address the small counties on issues, particular small counties, please let me know and we'll start working on that. It's a wonderful colleague dinner and it's a great time to meet colleagues and forge those bonds. But we could probably bring a little bit more substance to it as well if you would like.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, yeah. I don't attending those to have Craig there, you know, to help to try to explain some things, and I think they like hanging out with the small counties. Better than the large counties.
Yeah.
I said that.
We feed them better.
Yeah,
So, and we're nicer people.
I think I agree.
I think it'd be great to have a guest speaker there.
I'll talk to Craig and we can see if there's
See what
somebody.
we can do
who-
if we can address a pertinent subject or something.
Right, right. And the small counties are well tied into things that, I mean, for example, you know, Department of Fire Management, one that makes a lot of sense to us. So anyway, I will work with him and see if we can arrange to have somebody come and spend a few minutes talking to us about an issue that's important to small counties.
We'll move to our next item of business, the consent agenda. Entertain for motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as listed.
I second that motion.
Motion has been made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it, so ordered. Now move into the supervisor reports. Do any of you gentlemen have anything to report?
I don't have anything to report for this week.
Nothing to report for this week either. Thank you.
And I don't either. So with that said, this meeting's adjourned. 27.
Look at that.
What time was he on?
Glad you listened to.
6:30. Just in case anybody wanted. Show up at some fun things. So. Do like more private stuff.
Now I gotta go print my stuff for.
What's that?